The last time I saw my name on our family tree, it was written in blue ink beside my younger sister's. My mother had framed the chart years ago and hung it proudly in the hallway like proof that we belonged to something bigger than ourselves. Every birthday, every holiday, every family dinner happened under that frame. I used to walk past it without thinking. I never imagined one day I'd stop in front of it and realize my name was gone. Not crossed out. Not faded. Gone. At first, I honestly thought I was losing my mind. I remember standing there in complete silence, staring at the empty space where my branch used to be. My chest felt tight, like the air had suddenly disappeared from the room. I looked closer, thinking maybe someone had moved things around for cleaning or replaced the frame. But no. The paper was new, fresh, updated, and I wasn't part of it anymore. Then I heard my father's voice behind me. Come. Almost rehearsed. You weren't supposed to find out like this. That sentence changed everything. For most of my life, I believed we were a normal family. Not perfect, but normal enough. My father was strict, my mother was distant, and my younger sister Emily always seemed to get away with things I couldn't. But I accepted that. Every family has favorites, right? Every family has secrets too. I just never thought I'd become one of them. Growing up, I always felt slightly out of place, though I could never explain why. There were little things. Family jokes I wasn't included in. Stories everyone remembered except me. My grandparents treating me differently than the others. Even photos on the wall seemed strange sometimes. There were hundreds of pictures of birthdays, vacations, and school events, but somehow I was missing from more of them than I should have been. Whenever I asked about it, my mother would smile too quickly and say, "You're imagining things." So eventually I stopped asking. But deep down, something always felt wrong. The night everything fell apart started like any other Sunday dinner. My father sat at the head of the table reading messages on his phone while Emily talked endlessly about her engagement party. My mother barely looked at me the entire evening. I remember trying to tell them about a promotion I'd just gotten at work, hoping maybe for once they'd sound proud. Instead, my father interrupted me mid-sentence. "We need to discuss something important after dinner." The room went quiet. Emily suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the first moment I knew something bad was coming. After dinner, my mother cleared the plates with shaky hands while my father told me to sit in the living room. He didn't sound angry. Somehow that made it worse. Angry I could handle. Silence was harder. Then he placed a folder on the table between us. Inside were papers. Old documents. Certificates, letters, and one sentence highlighted in yellow. Record correction approved. I frowned, confused. What is this? Nobody answered immediately. My mother sat down slowly, staring at the floor. Emily stood near the doorway looking pale. My father folded his hands together like he was preparing for a business meeting instead of destroying someone's life. Then he said the words I still hear in my nightmares. "You were a mistake we're correcting." At first I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to understand what he meant. "A mistake," I repeated. My father slid another document toward me. My hands shook as I picked it up. The paper explained legal changes, family records, inheritance adjustments, things that didn't make sense together. Then I saw it. My name had been officially removed from the family registry. It felt unreal. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say this was some horrible misunderstanding. But she just cried quietly into her hands. That hurt more than anything. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Why would you do this?" My father finally looked directly at me. Because the truth finally came out. Those words hit like a punch to the chest. Apparently there had been secrets buried for decades. Secrets about my birth. Secrets about who I really was. And according to my father, I had never truly belonged to them in the first place. I wanted answers. Real answers. But every question only led to more confusion. Why now? Why wait all these years? And if I wasn't really part of the family, then who was I? The conversation turned ugly fast. Emily begged my father to stop talking. My mother kept saying, "Please don't do this tonight." But he ignored both of them. It was almost like he'd waited years for this moment. Then came the sentence that broke whatever connection we still had left. "You need to leave this house by tomorrow." Just like that. No discussion. No apology. Nothing. I remember sitting there completely numb while the people I'd loved my entire life acted like removing me from their lives was paperwork they simply needed to finish. Like deleting my name from a family tree could erase every memory attached to it. But the strangest part? As painful as it was, a small piece of me wondered if they were hiding something even worse. Because the fear in my mother's eyes didn't look like guilt. It looked like terror. And later that night, after everyone had gone upstairs, I found something hidden inside the folder my father forgot to take with him. One photograph, one date, and one handwritten sentence on the back that changed the entire story. If he ever finds out what really happened that night, none of us will survive it. I stared at the photograph for what felt like hours. The picture was old and slightly bent at the corners, like someone had handled it too many times. It showed a woman standing outside a small hospital building at night, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. The woman wasn't my mother. I was sure of that immediately. But the baby had my name written on the back. Daniel. Underneath it was a date from 28 years ago, the exact day I was born. And below that, in messy handwriting, were the words I couldn't stop reading over and over again. If he ever finds out what really happened that night, none of us will survive it. My stomach turned. I looked toward the staircase, half expecting my father to come storming back downstairs and snatch the photo out of my hands. But the house stayed silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that makes every tiny sound feel dangerous. I slipped the photograph into my jacket pocket without thinking. That instinct probably saved me later. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the hallway made me sit upright in bed. My mind kept replaying the entire conversation downstairs. My father's cold expression. My mother crying without defending me. Emily looking terrified instead of surprised. That was the part bothering me most. None of them acted shocked. It was like they'd all known this day was coming eventually. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps outside my room. Slow and careful. I held my breath as someone stopped near the door. For a second I thought they might come in. Instead, I heard whispering. Emily's voice. I don't think he knows everything. Then my father answered quietly, but I still caught every word. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Their footsteps faded away after that, leaving me wide awake with even more questions than before. The next morning felt unreal. My suitcase sat open on the bed while I packed pieces of my life into it like a stranger preparing for a trip they never wanted to take. Clothes. Old notebooks. A few childhood photos I managed to grab before my mother noticed. I kept waiting for someone to stop me. Nobody did. By noon, the house looked like I had never existed there at all. The framed family tree was gone from the hallway. My pictures had disappeared from the shelves. Even the coffee mug with my name on it was missing from the kitchen cabinet. It was happening so fast it almost felt planned. Like they'd prepared for my disappearance long before telling me. My mother finally approached me while I carried my bags to the front door. Her eyes were red from crying, and for a moment I thought she might finally explain everything. Instead, she pressed an envelope into my hand. Don't open this here, she whispered. Before I could respond, my father appeared behind her. And just like that, her expression changed completely. Fear. Real fear. I'd never seen my mother scared of anyone before. But around my father, she suddenly looked small and nervous, like she was terrified of saying the wrong thing. He opened the front door and stepped aside. No goodbye. No apology. Nothing. I walked out carrying 2 bags and a lifetime of questions. The strange part was, once I left the house, I didn't know where to go. I sat in my car parked across the street for almost an hour, staring at the place I'd called home my entire life. Curtains shifted upstairs. I knew they were watching me leave. The envelope burned in my pocket the entire time. Finally, I opened it. Inside was cash, an old motel key, and a note written in my mother's handwriting. Room 214. Green Valley Motel. Don't trust your father. Don't tell anyone where you are. Please forgive me. That was it. No explanation. No signature. Just fear pressed into every word. I drove to the motel that evening while rain hammered against the windshield. The place looked forgotten by the world. Flickering sign, cracked parking lot, stained curtains hanging in the windows. Not exactly somewhere my mother would normally send me. Which meant she was desperate. Room 214 smelled like dust and old cigarettes. There was a single bed, a buzzing lamp, and an ancient television mounted crookedly on the wall. At first glance, the room looked empty. Then I noticed the box under the bed. It was taped shut with layers of yellowed packing tape. My hands shook while opening it. Inside were documents. Newspaper clippings. Old photographs. And one VHS tape labeled only with a date. The same date from the photograph. My birth date. Suddenly, every strange memory from my childhood started rushing back at once. The arguments my parents thought I never heard. The way relatives would stop talking whenever I entered the room. The time I found my father burning papers in the backyard late at night when I was 13. When I asked what he was doing, he snapped at me harder than ever before. And then there was my grandmother. 2 years before she died, she grabbed my wrist during a family dinner and whispered something I never understood at the time. They lied to you, Daniel. All of them. Back then, everyone blamed her age and memory problems. My father practically dragged her out of the room afterward. Now I wasn't so sure. I spent hours going through the contents of the box. Most of the papers didn't fully make sense yet, but certain names kept appearing repeatedly. Doctors. Lawyers. A woman named Clara Bennett. And every trail seemed connected to one thing. A fire. 28 years ago, there had been a fire at an apartment building across town. According to the newspaper clipping, 2 people died that night while a child mysteriously disappeared before emergency crews arrived. I froze when I read the address. Because I knew that building. Not personally. But my father used to drive past it sometimes when I was little. Every single time he'd go completely quiet afterward. Like the place haunted him. My pulse quickened as I picked up another photo from the box. This one showed the burned apartment building surrounded by police tape. And standing near the crowd in the background was my father. Much younger. Watching the fire. Watching it with the exact same expression he had the night he erased me from the family tree. That cold, emotionless stare. Then I noticed something else in the photo that made my blood run cold. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was the woman from the hospital picture. And written across the bottom corner of the photograph, almost hidden by smoke stains, were 3 words. She survived too. I couldn't stop staring at the photograph. The woman beside my father looked exhausted, her face partly hidden beneath a hood, but there was something familiar about her eyes. I had seen them before. I just couldn't figure out where. Outside, thunder rattled the motel windows. The old air conditioner buzzed unevenly, filling the silence between every thought. I sat on the edge of the bed surrounded by papers, trying to connect pieces that refused to fit together. A fire. A missing child. A woman who survived. And somehow my father had been involved in all of it. The deeper I looked, the worse the feeling in my stomach became. One newspaper clipping mentioned that investigators believed the apartment fire started from faulty wiring. Another article hinted there were rumors of something suspicious, but no evidence was ever found. The case faded from public attention after a few weeks. But someone had kept every article. Every single one. Folded carefully inside the box like proof that the story had never really ended. I reached for the VHS tape again. It looked ancient, dusty around the edges. There was no label except the date. I searched the motel room hoping to find an old player, but there was nothing. That tape became the only thing I could think about. Whatever was on it had been hidden for nearly 3 decades. And somehow my mother wanted me to find it now. Around midnight, my phone vibrated suddenly on the nightstand, nearly making me jump out of my skin. A known number. I answered carefully. Hello. For a few seconds, there was only breathing on the other end. Then Emily whispered, "You need to stop digging." My chest tightened instantly. Emily? What's going on? You shouldn't have taken the box. How do you even know about that? Silence. I could hear her breathing shakily like she was standing outside in the cold. Then she said something that made my pulse spike. Dad's looking for it. A chill ran through me. What exactly is in those files? I asked. You think this is only about family secrets? She whispered. Daniel, you don't understand what happens if certain people find out the truth. Then tell me the truth. Again silence. I heard a car door slam somewhere near her. She lowered her voice even more. There are things Mom never told you. About the fire. About the woman in those photos. About why Dad really kept you. Kept me. Not raised me. Kept me. The word hit harder than anything else. Before I could ask another question, Emily spoke quickly. If anyone asks, you never heard from me. Then the call disconnected. I stared at the phone in disbelief. For the first time in my life, I realized Emily might have been afraid all these years too. Growing up, she always seemed protected while I was constantly criticized. But now I started remembering things differently. The way she'd avoid arguments. The way she'd instantly go quiet whenever my father entered the room. Maybe she wasn't favored. Maybe she was just careful. I barely slept again that night. Every passing car outside the motel made me look through the curtains. I kept imagining my father pulling into the parking lot. Imagining someone coming for the box. By morning, paranoia had settled deep into my chest. I decided to visit the old apartment building from the newspaper clipping. The place still stood on the edge of town, squeezed between newer buildings and abandoned storefronts. Most of the fire damage had been repaired years ago, but parts of the structure still looked scarred. Black marks climbed the brick walls near the upper windows like shadows frozen in place. Standing there felt strange. Familiar. Too familiar. I couldn't explain it, but something about the building made my head ache. like a memory buried too deep was trying to push its way back up. An elderly man sweeping outside a nearby convenience store noticed me staring. "You knew someone there?" he asked. I hesitated. "Maybe." The man leaned on his broom. "Bad night, that fire. People around here still talk about it sometimes. Do you remember what happened?" He gave a slow nod. "Everyone said it was an accident. But there were police everywhere for weeks. Reporters too." He paused before adding quietly, "And there was that missing boy." My throat tightened. "What boy?" The old man studied my face carefully before answering. "They never found him. Kid just disappeared before firefighters got inside." He frowned slightly. "Funny thing is, some witnesses claimed they saw a man carrying a child away from the building before the fire spread." I felt suddenly dizzy. "A man? Tall guy. Dark coat. Looked nervous." The old man shrugged. "Police never proved anything." I could barely breathe, because I already knew who that man probably was. My father. As I turned to leave, the old man called after me again. There was also a woman asking questions years later. Maybe 10 years ago. He narrowed his eyes, thinking. "She came back several times actually." "The woman from the photo?" I asked quickly. "Could be." He pointed toward the apartment building. "She always stood outside that corner unit upstairs. Like she was waiting for someone." I followed his finger toward a burned-looking window on the 3rd floor. And suddenly, without warning, an image flashed in my mind. Smoke. Sirens. Someone shouting. A woman crying. The memory hit so hard I had to steady myself against a parked car. For one split second, I could almost hear a voice yelling my name through the chaos. Then it vanished. I stumbled back toward my car with my heart pounding uncontrollably. Something was happening to me. The closer I got to the truth, the more broken memories started surfacing. And deep down, I think part of me already knew why. Back at the motel, I found the room door slightly open. Every nerve in my body locked up instantly. I knew I had closed it before leaving. Slowly, I pushed the door wider. The room looked untouched at first glance. The bed still messy. The lamp still buzzing softly. But the box under the bed was gone. In its place sat a single envelope. No stamp. No name. Just 3 handwritten words across the front. "You were never abandoned." My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope. The motel room suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Every sound outside, footsteps, distant traffic, a door slamming somewhere down the hallway, made my heart race harder. Someone had been inside this room while I was gone. Someone had taken the box without leaving a single trace behind. Except for this. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a small silver key taped to it. The note contained only one sentence. "Your mother tried to come back for you." I read it 3 times before my brain fully processed the words. My mother. Not the woman who raised me. My real mother. The room spun slightly around me. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, staring at the key in my palm. It looked old, scratched around the edges, with the number 312 engraved into the metal. A locker key. Or maybe an apartment. I didn't know anymore. What I did know was that somebody else was moving pieces around this story before I could even understand the game. Every answer led to another mystery. Every clue made my father look less like a cold parent and more like someone hiding from something dangerous. Or someone dangerous himself. I looked at the motel window instinctively. For a split second, I thought I saw a dark figure standing near the parking lot across the street. Watching. But when I stepped closer, the figure disappeared behind a passing truck. Panic crawled up my spine. I grabbed my jacket, stuffed the envelope into my pocket, and left the room immediately. The motel receptionist barely looked up as I hurried past the front desk. Rain had started again outside, turning the streets slick and empty. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel while trying to think clearly. Whoever entered my room knew exactly what they were looking for. And they found it before I could. That meant one thing. I was running out of time. The number on the key finally led me downtown to an old bus station storage facility that looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 90s. Half the lights outside flickered weakly against the rain. The building smelled like dust, wet concrete, and rust. Locker 312 sat near the back wall. For a moment, I just stood there staring at it while my pulse hammered in my ears. Then I slid the key into the lock. It opened immediately. Inside was a leather bag and a cassette recorder. That was it. No money. No documents. No explanation. I picked up the recorder carefully. A label stuck across the front had one word written in faded black marker. Daniel. My throat tightened. I pressed play. Static crackled loudly before a woman's shaky voice filled the tiny speaker. If you're hearing this, then something went wrong. I froze. The voice sounded tired and emotional, but familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I don't know how old you are now, she continued softly, and I don't know what they told you about me. But I need you to know I never stopped looking for you. My chest felt like it was caving in. I didn't leave you willingly, she said. That night changed everything. In the background of the recording I heard muffled noises. Sirens maybe. Or traffic. Then her voice lowered. Your father. The tape suddenly cut into static. I hit the side of the recorder trying to fix it, but the audio warped badly before stopping completely. No, no, no. I rewound it and tried again. Same result. The tape ended right when she mentioned him. Frustration surged through me so hard I nearly threw the recorder against the wall. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Think. The leather bag still remained unopened. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, and something else. A birth certificate. Not the one I grew up with. This one listed a completely different last name. Not my father's. Not my family's. And under mother was the name Clara Bennett. The woman from the photographs. The woman who survived the fire. My real mother. I leaned back against the storage locker wall trying to process everything at once. The world I thought I knew had completely collapsed in less than 48 hours. My family erased me from their lives because the truth was coming out. My father had some connection to the apartment fire. My real mother survived and spent years searching for me. And somehow I ended up raised by the very man she sounded terrified of. Suddenly my phone vibrated again. Another unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello. Heavy breathing. Then my mother's voice, the woman who raised me. Daniel, listen carefully, she whispered urgently. Mom? You need to leave town tonight. What's going on? He knows you found the storage locker. I spread through my body. How? He's been watching everything. Her voice cracked badly. Please just go somewhere safe. I stood up instantly. No. Not until somebody tells me the truth. You don't understand? Then help me understand. I snapped. Silence. I could hear her crying quietly on the other end. Finally, she whispered something that made my blood run cold. The fire wasn't supposed to happen. The hallway around me suddenly felt freezing. What does that mean? Another long silence. Then I heard a door slam near her side of the call. Her breathing became panicked instantly. He's here, she whispered. Mom? If he finds out I called you. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in shock. A second later, another message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. Look outside. Slowly, I turned toward the rain-covered parking lot beyond the storage facility entrance. A black car sat across the street with its headlights off, and standing beside it was my father. Even from a distance, I recognized the way he stood, perfectly still, hands in his coat pockets, watching the building without moving. Watching me. My heart slammed violently against my ribs. How long had he been there? The moment he realized I saw him, he stepped forward slightly into the streetlight. And for the first time in my life I saw fear on his face too. Not anger. Not disappointment. Fear. Then another figure suddenly emerged from the passenger side of the black car. A woman. Older now. Pale. Nervous. But I recognized her instantly from the photographs. Clara Bennett. My real mother. She looked directly at me through the rain with tears in her eyes. And before I could move or speak, my father grabbed her arm as if trying to stop her from getting closer. Then she screamed one sentence that echoed through the storm. Daniel, he's not the one you should be afraid of. The moment Clara screamed those words, everything exploded into chaos. My father spun around sharply, gripping her arm tighter while scanning the street like he expected someone else to appear. Clara fought against him, tears running down her face as rain soaked through her coat. Let me talk to him, she shouted. You're making this worse, my father snapped back. I stood frozen near the entrance of the storage facility, unable to move. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing anymore. The woman I had spent my entire life believing abandoned me was standing right in front of me, terrified. And somehow my father, the man who erased me from the family tree, suddenly looked like he was trying to protect me. None of it made sense. Then headlights appeared at the far end of the street. Another car. Fast. My father saw it first. His entire expression changed instantly. Get inside, he yelled at me. I didn't move. The speeding car turned sharply into the parking lot, tires screeching against wet pavement. Before it even stopped completely, Clara stepped backward in panic. No, she whispered. Two men got out. Neither of them looked familiar, but the fear on Clara's face told me everything I needed to know. One of them pointed directly toward me. And my father reacted immediately. "Run, Daniel." That single moment shattered every assumption I had left. Because fear in someone's voice can't be faked. Not like that. My father shoved Clara behind him and moved toward the men before they could reach me. I had never seen him look nervous before, but now his hands trembled slightly at his sides. "You shouldn't have come here," he said coldly. The taller man smirked. "You really thought this could stay buried forever?" Buried. The word hit hard. Rain poured harder around us while traffic sounds echoed faintly from distant streets. The second man kept staring at me the entire time, like he was studying a ghost. Then he said quietly, "That kid should have never survived the fire." My blood ran cold. Clara let out a broken sob behind my father. Everything inside me screamed to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. I needed answers too badly now. "What are they talking about?" I shouted. Nobody answered immediately. The taller man laughed under his breath. "You never told him?" My father's jaw tightened. "Daniel," he said firmly without looking back at me, "you need to go right now." "No," I snapped. "Not until somebody tells me what's happening." The stranger took another step forward. "Fine," he said. "Ask your father why your real parents died." The world seemed to stop. I stared at Clara instantly. She looked horrified. "My parents died?" The man pointed toward my father. "He took you after the fire. That's the truth." I felt physically sick. Every sound around me faded into dull noise while my brain tried to catch up. My father had never said he was my biological parent after revealing the family secret, but hearing it out loud changed everything. Taken. Not adopted. Not rescued. Taken. "That's not the whole story," Clara cried desperately. "Then tell him," the man shot back. My father suddenly stepped closer to them, his voice dangerously low. "You need to leave." But the stranger only smiled. "You spent 28 years hiding him from people who were looking for him." He glanced toward me again. "You really think he's safe now that they know he's alive?" "Safe from who?" The question pounded inside my skull. Before anyone could answer, another memory flashed violently through my mind. Smoke filling a hallway. Someone carrying me. A woman screaming. And a loud bang shaking the entire building. I stumbled backward, gripping the wall beside the entrance. The memories were becoming clearer now. And somehow that terrified everyone around me. Clara suddenly broke free from my father and ran toward me through the rain. "Daniel, listen to me carefully," she said breathlessly. "Your parents were good people. They were trying to expose something dangerous." "What dangerous thing?" Her eyes darted toward the strangers nervously. "They found out about people using the apartment building to hide financial records, fake identities, illegal operations." Her voice shook badly. "Your father worked security there at the time." I looked at him instantly. He looked exhausted now. Older somehow. "The fire wasn't an accident," Clara whispered. "Your parents found evidence against powerful people. That night," she swallowed hard, "things went wrong." The taller stranger interrupted harshly. "You're telling the story like they were heroes." "They were," Clara shouted back. My chest tightened painfully. Every answer only created bigger questions. If my real parents were dead, why did Clara earlier sound like she was my mother? And why had she spent years searching for me? Almost like she blamed herself for losing me. Then the second stranger finally spoke again. "Ask her who she really is." Clara froze completely. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm around us. Slowly I turned toward her. "What does he mean?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. She opened her mouth to answer. But suddenly a deafening crash echoed from the street. Everyone turned at once. A truck had slammed directly into the black car parked behind us. Glass exploded everywhere. The impact threw the vehicle sideways across the pavement while alarms blared loudly into the night. Chaos erupted instantly. The two strangers cursed and backed away fast. My father grabbed my arm hard. "We have to move now." "What's happening?" I yelled. But before he could answer, I noticed something horrifying. The truck driver wasn't getting out. In fact, nobody inside the truck moved at all. Almost like the crash itself had only been meant as a distraction. Then headlights appeared at the entrance of the parking lot. 3 more vehicles. Black SUVs. They rolled in slowly, surrounding the area with terrifying precision. The strangers who had confronted my father suddenly looked nervous too. One of them muttered under his breath, "They found him faster than expected." "Found me?" My pulse exploded. Doors on the SUVs opened almost simultaneously. Several people stepped out wearing dark jackets, their faces hidden beneath caps and rain. One woman stood near the front vehicle watching me carefully. Then she removed her hood slightly. And my father went pale. Actually pale. I had never seen fear hit someone that fast before. "No," he whispered. Clara looked like she might collapse. The woman across the parking lot stared directly at me with cold, emotionless eyes. Then she said the one name I hadn't heard yet in this entire nightmare. "Welcome back, Jonah." My heart stopped. Jonah. Not Daniel. Jonah. And somehow, deep inside me, the name felt familiar. The name hit me harder than anything else that night. Jonah. The second I heard it, another memory came crashing back so suddenly I almost lost my balance. A woman kneeling in front of me. Smoke filling the ceiling above us. Her hands gripping my face while she whispered, "Jonah, listen to me. You stay quiet no matter what happens." I gasped and stumbled backward. The parking lot blurred around me while pieces of my childhood, no, my real childhood, started snapping into place. I remembered the apartment building. I remembered hiding inside a closet while people shouted downstairs. And I remembered my father. Not as my father. As the man who carried me out of the fire. The woman from the SUV kept staring at me calmly while rain poured around us. "You remember now, don't you?" she asked. My father stepped protectively in front of me immediately. "Don't talk to him." The woman ignored him completely. "For 28 years, she continued, we searched for that child. We thought he died in the fire with his parents." "Stop lying," Clara snapped. The woman's expression darkened slightly. "You're one to talk." I looked between all of them, completely overwhelmed. "Somebody tell me the truth," I shouted. This time my father finally did. He looked exhausted. Defeated almost. "The fire was real," he said quietly. "And your parents really were trying to expose dangerous people connected to financial crimes and identity fraud inside that building." He swallowed hard. "But they underestimated how far those people would go to protect themselves." The woman near the SUV smiled faintly. "They made mistakes." My father ignored her. "The fire was meant to destroy evidence. Nothing more." His voice cracked slightly for the first time ever. "But your parents got trapped inside." "And you took him," one of the strangers interrupted. "Yes," my father admitted instantly. The entire parking lot went silent except for the rain. "I found him upstairs hiding alone." He looked directly at me now. The building was collapsing. "Your mother begged me to save you before the firefighters arrived." My chest tightened painfully. "She didn't survive?" I asked quietly. Clara started crying immediately. My father lowered his eyes. "No." The truth hit me like a wave. Every fantasy I secretly built over the past 2 days disappeared in seconds. My real parents were gone. The people responsible had buried the story for decades. And the man I hated for erasing me from the family tree had actually saved my life. Then why erase me now? As if hearing the question in my head, my father answered softly. "Because they found you again." He glanced toward the black SUVs. The woman stepped forward slowly. "He was never supposed to know who he really was," she said. "His existence creates problems for a lot of important people." "Because I survived the fire?" I asked. "Because your father left evidence behind," she corrected. My pulse quickened instantly. "What evidence?" Nobody answered immediately. Then Clara finally whispered, "The tape. The broken cassette tape." I stared at her. My father's face changed instantly too, like he suddenly understood something horrible. "The tape wasn't damaged accidentally," Clara said shakily. "Your mother recorded names before the fire started. Bank accounts. Fake identities. Everything." The woman near the SUV sighed impatiently. "And unfortunately, she hid copies. That explained everything. The searching. The lies. The fear. They weren't chasing me because of who I was. They were chasing me because they thought I might lead them to the evidence my real parents hid before they died." Suddenly, Emily's voice echoed in my head again. "You don't understand what happens if certain people find out the truth." Now I finally did. One of the strangers moved closer aggressively. "Where's the rest of the tape?" he demanded. "I don't know," I answered honestly. But my father suddenly grabbed my arm tightly. "Yes, you do." I stared at him in confusion. Then another memory surfaced. A hidden vent. A child's hand pushing something small inside before smoke filled the room. My breathing stopped. The apartment. The third-floor corner unit. That was why the memories kept pulling me back there. The tape was still hidden inside the building. The woman by the SUV realized it at the exact same moment. "Go," she ordered sharply to the others. Everything exploded into movement. The strangers rushed toward their vehicles while my father shoved me backward toward his car. Get in. What about Clara? She's coming? Within seconds we were speeding through rain-soaked streets while headlights followed behind us. Clara sat beside me trembling violently while my father drove faster than I'd ever seen before. They'll tear that building apart, Clara whispered. If they find the tape first. They won't, my father interrupted. I looked at him carefully. Why did you really remove me from the family? I finally asked. He stayed silent for several seconds. Then he answered quietly. Because keeping you close made you easier to find. The truth hurt more than I expected. Everything he'd done, the coldness, the distance, even erasing me from the family tree, had started as protection. Twisted protection. But protection anyway. By the time we reached the apartment building, the storm had become violent. Police sirens echoed somewhere nearby. The black SUVs were already there. We ran inside anyway. The building smelled damp and burned even after all these years. My memories guided me upstairs almost automatically. 3rd floor. End of the hallway. The same apartment. My hands shook as I reached the old air vent near the closet. Please still be there. I pulled the cover loose. And froze. The space inside was empty. No, Clara whispered behind me. Someone had already taken it. A slow clap echoed from the apartment doorway. We turned instantly. The woman from the SUV stood there holding the missing tape in her hand. You were close, she said calmly. My father stepped in front of us again. It's over, she continued. The evidence gets destroyed tonight. And this story disappears permanently. But then something unexpected happened. Clara started laughing softly. Not nervous laughter. Relieved laughter. The woman frowned instantly. What's so funny? Clara wiped tears from her eyes. That tape was never the real evidence. Silence filled the room. Then my father slowly looked toward me. And suddenly I understood. The memories. The hidden name. The reason they hunted me for 28 years. I wasn't just a survivor. When I was a child hiding during the fire, I had witnessed everything. Every face. Every name. Every conversation. The final piece of evidence they spent decades trying to erase was me. And judging by the terrified expression suddenly appearing on the woman's face, she realized it too. Nobody moved for several seconds. Rain hammered against the broken apartment windows while the woman near the doorway stared at me with a completely different expression now. Before she looked confident. In control. Now she looked desperate. My father understood it too. That's why you couldn't let him exist publicly, he said quietly. Not because of the tape. Because if his memories ever returned, everything would come out. The woman tightened her grip on the cassette tape. He was 4 years old, she snapped. Children forget. But I didn't, I whispered. And the terrifying part was, I was starting to remember more. Not perfectly. Not every detail. But enough. Faces around a table. Arguments. My real father yelling that he was going to expose them. Someone threatening him. And one face standing in the corner watching everything happen. Her face. The woman in front of us. You were there that night, I said slowly. She didn't answer. You started the fire. Clara covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes again. My father stayed perfectly still, watching the woman carefully like he expected her to do something reckless. Then unexpectedly she smiled. Not proudly. Sadly. You think this story is simple? She asked quietly. You think there are heroes and villains here? No, my father answered before I could speak. But innocent people died. For the first time the woman looked shaken by that. You have no idea what your parents were involved in, she said to me. The people connected to that building weren't just criminals hiding money. There were politicians, businessmen, powerful families. Your parents threatened all of them. They were trying to do the right thing, Clara said sharply. And they paid for it, the woman replied. Silence filled the apartment again. Then police sirens grew louder outside. The woman heard them too. My father slowly exhaled. It's over. One of the men from earlier suddenly appeared behind her in the hallway. We need to leave. Now. But she didn't move. Instead she looked directly at me one last time. You survived because somebody made a choice that night, she said quietly. Never forget that. Then she handed the cassette tape to the man beside her and walked out of the apartment without another word. By the time police officers reached the building minutes later, the black SUVs were already gone. Everything after that happened slowly. Too slowly. Statements. Questions. Investigations reopening after nearly 3 decades. Financial records hidden inside old accounts finally surfacing. Names connected to the apartment fire appearing in newspapers and online reports for weeks afterward. The story that had been buried for 28 years finally came back into the light. And somehow, my name was right in the center of it. Or both names, I guess. Daniel. Jonah. For a while, I didn't know which one belonged to me anymore. The hardest part wasn't learning my past had been built on lies. It was realizing the people who lied also loved me in their own broken way. My father, the man I spent days hating, had carried me out of that fire knowing powerful people would eventually come looking for me. He gave me a different name. A different life. He erased pieces of my identity trying to protect me from people who wanted the story gone forever. It didn't excuse everything he did, but it explained it. A week later, I visited him alone for the first time since everything happened. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The family tree frame was gone from the hallway completely. He sat quietly at the kitchen table while I stood near the doorway unsure what to say. Finally, I asked the question that had haunted me since the beginning. Why did you never tell me the truth? He stared down at his hands for a long time before answering. Because every year you stayed hidden meant another year you stayed alive. The sadness in his voice felt real. I thought if I kept you distant enough, if I made sure nobody looked too closely at you, eventually they'd stop searching. But they never did. No, he admitted softly. They never did. For the first time in my life, I noticed how tired he looked. Not cold. Not cruel. Just tired. Like he'd spent decades carrying guilt he couldn't put down. Before leaving, I noticed something sitting on the kitchen counter. The family tree. Rolled up carefully beside the frame. My name was back on it. Not erased anymore. Not hidden. Just there. Simple as that. A few months later, Clara and I met regularly for coffee. Our relationship felt strange at first. She wasn't my mother by blood, but she had been my real mother's closest friend. The woman trusted her enough to protect me if anything happened. That was the secret nobody explained clearly before. Clara had survived the fire because my real parents forced her out moments before everything collapsed. She spent years trying to find me afterward, but my father stayed hidden, terrified the wrong people would track us both. In a strange way, all of them had spent years trying to protect me from the same nightmare. Even Emily eventually admitted she always suspected there was something different about me growing up. That's why she looked terrified the night my father revealed everything. She knew secrets were finally breaking apart. One evening, months after the investigation ended, I returned to the apartment building alone. The place was abandoned now, scheduled for demolition. Broken windows rattled softly in the wind while old police tape still clung to parts of the entrance. I stood outside staring up at the third-floor window for a long time. That building took everything from me. My real parents. My identity. My childhood. But somehow it also gave me something back. The truth. And sometimes the truth is painful before it becomes freeing. Before leaving, I pulled out the photograph I'd carried since the motel room, the one showing Clara holding me outside the hospital all those years ago. On the back, beneath the old handwritten warning, another sentence had been hidden so faintly I never noticed it before. He deserves the chance to become whoever he chooses. I smiled quietly to myself after reading it, because for the first time in my life I finally could.